Hi, my name is Sarah, and my video is on why people spread misinformation without verifying it. So, for starters, on defining misinformation, it's misleading or incorrect information that is easily spread and perceived as true. So, most people have seen a lot of forms of misinformation being spread in the media recently, and this is especially poignant in today's society where people are consuming forms of media of all kinds, whether it be social media, news outlets, or constantly being just having information thrown at us. And it often seems infeasible, but misinformation spread kind of utilizes factors such as fear and sensationalism to be convincing. So a lot of times misinformation is just so shocking to what seems normal that people are kind of forced to believe it out of fear of what might happen if they don't. So I included a satirical post from a website called The Onion that kind of represents what misinformation headlines might look like with the shock factor. So topics to be covered in this video is why misinformation is so easily spread and what factors cause us to trust it, and also how we can protect ourselves from being manipulated as we consume media and interact with those around us. So I especially wanted to touch on how we can protect ourselves, but also prevent the spread of misinformation to others. So I wanted to include an example of what a misinformation sharing scenario might look like. So imagine that a trusted friend tells you that they learned from their very reliable news source that Trader Joe's employees have actually been hired to spy on you, and they assert this is why the cashiers are always so polite and ask so many questions. It's because they're spying on you. And you laugh and wonder what source your friend could have possibly gotten this information from. And then the next time you walk into Trader Joe's, you walk in confidently and go about your shopping. But when it comes time to check out and the cashier asks what your weekend looks like, you feel hesitant to answer. What if what your friend said is true? And you choose not to tell the cashier the truth. Better safe than sorry. And while it's unlikely that the Trader Joe's employees are actually spying on you, and you do have a hard time believing this, you also feel inclined to believe this misinformation to protect yourself. And you wonder if you should warn your friends who also shop there. And that's how the rumor continues to spread and the misinformation begins to affect people. So obviously, Trader Joe's employees spying on you is pretty unfeasible, but you feel a need to protect yourself and also others, and that's how misinformation can spread in this scenario. And so I wanted to focus on why misinformation is spread so easily among peer groups, especially among college students. And one suggestion is that we feel such a sense of excitement and established trust. And according to a study by the American Psychological Association, people are more likely to believe information if it comes from in-group sources rather than out-group ones. And also, a recent study by Gwinote and associates found that there are often power motives in sharing misinformation. So that means that people will tend to feel a sense of power if they're able to share information with others that contains so much shock value. And so, for misinformation in mass media as compared to friend groups, there is a study by Atkinson and Schifrin that led to the cognitive load theory that suggests that there's only so much information that we can process. But despite this, many people find themselves in a state of information overload, which is when we're trying to process the amount that exceeds what we truly can. And so it's difficult to take the time to verify information when we're constantly in a state of information overload because we're just constantly consuming so much. And then also we want answers, including his 2021 study. Marcus Brower asserted that uncertainty is a difficult psychological state for us. This is definitely true and something that I'm sure everyone can relate to. And then finally, a study by Buvat examined how factors such as confirmation bias, political partisanship, and so on affect how people perceive and share misinformation. So we're definitely much more likely to believe misinformation if it aligns with our political beliefs, or obviously confirmation bias is a huge issue. So this matters because misinformation spread leads to unnecessary fear and panic responses among the public for sure, and it can lead to rash decision making. One study I found that people in a certain area overdosed on a certain malaria drug because they were taught that it could actually cure COVID. And so people were so afraid of COVID, they were willing to believe this information about it. And finally, it can also lead to increased public fear of trusting valid sources. So people are way less likely to trust valid scientific sources because they are just so on guard to falling victim to misinformation. So finally, these are some helpful questions to ask in how we can prevent misinformation spread, especially relating to biases and verification of the information. And then these are my sources.